Check one. Check one. Can you hear me in the camera? Check one. Check, check. Check one. Can you hear me in the camera? They can hear me. Check one. Can you hear me in the camera? Check one. Can you hear me? Down? Okay. Let's see here. Check one. Can you hear me in the camera? Check one. Check one. Can you hear me? Lower? Check one. Check one. Can you hear me in the camera? Check one. Check one. Check two. Hey, hey, hey. Can you hear me in the camera?
Our first speaker today in our Jiu-Jitsu Con Talk series is Professor Marcus Buchecha Almeida. Buchecha is a 13-time world champion and an IBJJF Hall of Fame member. He won more black belt world titles than any competitor in the history of Jiu-Jitsu and has inspired countless practitioners all across the world. Buchecha, thank you so much for being here and for doing this.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you guys. Thank you, IBJJF, for having me. For me, it's a big pleasure. So it's first time that I'm here talking about. So usually I'm just there on the mat or teaching or competing. So to be here, something different, but let's do it. I'll enjoy for sure.
We're super excited to have you here, and I know you started training jiu-jitsu at a young age, so I thought we'd start out with you just talking a bit about how your goals kind of evolved in jiu-jitsu and when you decided that you wanted to be a black belt world champion.
Yes, of course. The long shot, it's everybody wants to be a world champion, right, as a black belt. But when I started, I didn't like jiu-jitsu. Like, it wasn't a passion at first sight because I was 12 years old. I started training because the influence of my sister. She was 15. So between like 12 and 15 years old, I was training jiu-jitsu and I was surfing. So I was just a kid doing sport because my parents kind of like were pushing me, but I didn't like it. So I remember everything changed when it was 2005. My teammates were coming back from the World Championship, and my professor at the time, Teco Shinzato, gave them the chance to talk about the experience. And I remember one of my teammates were like a champion, and he said, I got the silver medal, but I would change everything, all the gold medals that I have, to have this gold instead of the silver. So in my head, I was 15 years old. I said, damn, he would change all the titles because of one medal. I want to feel what he's talking about. I want to compete. I want to understand what he's talking about. That's when everything changed for me. So I was 15 years old and I decided I want to be a competitor. Of course, I didn't want to be a world champion at the time. I was a blue belt, so I want to be a blue belt world champion, which I did. Then purple, then brown. And of course, when I got the black belt, that was the ultimate goal. But I think I had to take one step of the time. So when you're a blue belt, it doesn't matter if you want to be a black belt world champion. You have to a ladder to walk, to step by step. So, which I did. I got the world title in every belt. And then when I got the black belt, the first year I didn't win, but eventually I got the title in my second try. And I didn't really plan too much the future, but after a lot of things happened, and when I was 8 times world champion as black belt, then I started like, I remember one time a reporter asked me like, oh, Buchecha, what drive you? That was the question. What drive you to do what you do? Every time before the competition, people ask you that. Like when you do interview, oh yeah, because I want to win, I want to be a world champion, I want to be the best. But it was kind of like empty answers, right? I remember I was sitting down when the reporter asked me like, what drive you? What motivates you? I was 8-time world champion. Then I said, I want to be what nobody ever done. I want to be the only person to say I did something, and I did. I won most titles than anyone else. So it was something really cool. Like I'm the only one in the whole world, in the planet, that did this. So it was something amazing for my career. But it didn't start as black belt. It started when I was 15 years old. So little by little, the goals were changing. Setting a goal, setting a reason to do it. And I did it, and I'm here today.
So I know when you first started competing, you had to overcome some challenges as a blue belt, overcoming some losses. Can you tell us some stories about what those early competitions were like for you?
Yes. Everybody thinks that Buchecha was Buchecha since the beginning, but it was different. I remember the first 10 tournaments that I fought, I lost in the very first round. So it took me a while to have the feeling to have my arm raised. And
I remember I was losing after, but in the very first round. So I didn't know, I didn't feel to have my arm raised in a long time. And I remember after the 10th tournament, I was fighting a tournament in Brazil called Copa Dragão, like like long time ago. And I was winning the fight. I was 16 years old. I got a triangle. I remember when I tried to switch the armbar, the opponent passed my guard and I lost. I'm the kind of guy, the competitor, that when I lose, I don't cry. I'm not the kind of like sore loser. But I remember this time I cried a lot and was really painful, that loss. So I remember like after like that, I told my professor, I said, you know what, I'm done. I'm suck at jiu-jitsu. I can't win and I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to compete. I don't want to train anymore. That's not for me. And I told that in front of like my teammates. We were like sitting down watching the fights, and my Teco Shinzato was my professor at the time. And he told me, all right, you can be the weak one and give up, or you can go Monday to the gym and try harder. It's up to you. So I didn't want to be the quitter in front of my friends, but in my head I said, you know what, I'm just gonna show up Monday to say that I'm not the quitter, but I'm done. But Monday I was there, I was training, I liked the environment, I liked to be in the gym around my friends. So I start training, I kind of forget a little bit, that I wasn't so upset anymore. But that was the first time that I almost quit my career. And then I remember the first tournament that I fought was like an in-house tournament. I was blue belt. I fought like against some teammates. I won my first round. I think was the second round was the final already. I fought against a guy 35 years old. I was 16, and I beat him, and I won my first title as a blue belt. But the joy, the happiness that I have that day, winning my first tournament, I can compare to the same joy, the same happiness when I win a world title as black belt, because it changed my life. It was means so much for me. I remember how happy I was, and of course when I win a world title, I know the feeling, but I can't compare. So it was something for sure changed my life. And after I won, everything changed. I started winning again. Of course, I lost a lot of times, but every loss is a lesson, right? But I'm the kind of guy that, thank God, I won more than I lost. So I took a lot of lessons from the wins as well. So I didn't wait to lose to learn the lesson. So I think the good thing of my career, I learned a lot of lessons from the winnings too.
So I want to get your take on motivation and consistency in jiu-jitsu, because I think a lot of people struggle with that, especially if you're a competitor and you have a lot of losses. How were you able to stay motivated and stay disciplined to maintain your training schedule?
Yeah, like that's a good question, because the motivation is something that it's not every day that you wake up like, I want to be a world champion. Some days you wake up, you're tired. Some days you don't want to train, especially when you're not a world champion yet. I remember I used to ride a bike to go to the gym. It was like 10 kilometers to go and 10 kilometers to get back. So I remember in the rainy days, in the cold days, when I was tired, it was like really hard for me. But I had to do it. Nobody could do that for me. So I pushed through and I did it anyway. So I went to the gym, because even like a bad day on the mat, still a good day of training. You still hours on the mat, so you counting hours. So, and I did. Of course, when you're black belt, when you're world champion, you have a better life, you're more comfortable. So I didn't have to ride the bike. I drove my car, so everything like changes. But I couldn't rely on motivation, because it's not every day that I wake up like, I want to be a world champion. But I rely on discipline. So no matter what, you do what you gotta do. So if I have to train twice a day, I'm gonna train twice a day no matter what. That's my job. That's what I have to do. So, and then that was a good way for me to keep like training, to keep discipline. The secret for me wasn't rely on motivation, but rely on discipline. I think that was the big key.
One thing that really stood out about your career is that it seemed like you flipped a switch when you went to go compete. Obviously, off the mat, you're a very nice, friendly person. When you got on the mat to compete, you kind of unleashed the animal or unleashed the beast. So, what pre-match rituals did you have, or what did you do before you stepped on the mat to get into that mindset?
Yeah, I think on the mat is really counts. So I remember I didn't have like anything in my head that I did like before fights, but in 2012 I remember everything what I did. So I was sitting in the stands, and I remember when the guy called open weight, black belt male, open weight, warm up area. So I still remember his voice, and I was like nervous. So I remember when I parked my car, I walked to the arena. I was afraid. I was in doubt. I wasn't sure if I would win. I was like insecure because maybe this new guy gonna beat me, or maybe I didn't train enough. Maybe I gonna lose in the first 10 seconds. I had a lot of negative thoughts when I walk in the arena. So I didn't want to talk to no one. I always walk with my head down, go straight to the stands where like checkmate used to be at the end of the pyramid. And I didn't even went to the changing room. I changed right there, put my Rock Balboa music, and run down the stairs. That's what I did. I remember when I was downstairs, a warm up area. I look everyone. Some look really tough. Some really confused. Look confused. Some people you look, they don't belong there. So I started noticing everyone was kind of like hostile atmosphere, and I stopped like thinking about, and I never did that before. It was the first time that I did. I sat down and I asked myself, why I'm doing this, right? Why I'm doing it? And I start having that conversation with myself. Nobody told me to do. I never had like a mental coach, but this conversation with myself changed everything for me. So was out of nowhere. I asked myself, and I start during the warm up. I start answering myself. Okay, why are you doing this? I'm not doing this for my coach, for my team, for my teammates, for my family, for my parents. I'm doing this because I want to be here. I put myself in the situation. So of course all the bad thoughts, because I didn't like realize. So I started, no, I want to be here. Jiu-Jitsu is my life. Jiu-Jitsu is my work. That's what I do. I left my family. I left my friends in Brazil. I moved to a new country without like any idea what could happen. And then, no, okay, that's what I want to do. And everything started changes. So all the doubts like start fading away, and I start changing the mindset. So you know what? Let's do it. I dropped so much sweat, so much tears, and so much blood on the mat, literally during the training. So somebody's got to pay for that, you know. And by the time when the referee did the gesture to walking on the mat, I was a completely different person. When I walked to the arena, and by the time after I have the conversation with myself, it changed everything. Why? Because I found the right reasons why I was doing it. So I realized when you do something that you're passionate about it with the right reasons, I think that's the perfect combination. And one thing that I had in my head too is like, no matter what, I'm gonna give everything I have on the mat. I'm not gonna go home like, oh, I should try that. I should explode a little bit more in that moment. No, I'm gonna give everything I have in every fight. I'm not gonna save. So when I leave the mat, okay, I tried. So I don't have this, like, I should have done this. So after when I step in with this mindset, everything works good. So this guy to beat me, he has to literally like kill me, because I'm not gonna tap easy. So it helped me a lot. I did that in 2012, so I repeat 2013. And even nowadays, when I go to fight MMA, that's what I do. I go to the change, like to the locker room. I sit down and like, okay, why are you doing this? and I started had the conversation with myself. That changed everything for me.
That's amazing. So one thing that I think sets champions apart from other people who compete is their ability to grow and come back from losses. So were there any losses in your career in particular? Do you have any stories you can share about losses that really helped you evolve as an athlete and a competitor?
Yeah, like I said, I had a lot of losses in my career. Losses, it's big part of a competitor, of an athlete. And two losses that changed everything for me, in particular, was this one that I just told about it, when I was a blue belt. And the other one that changed everything was in 2011, the super heavyweight final of the World Championship against Leonardo Nogueira. I remember it was a tough fight, was my World Championship. I was living in Florida in 2010. I was living the American dream. I was teaching in a gym. I was living in America. I wasn't living with my parents anymore, but I was losing a lot because I became a professor, I became a teacher instead of just competitor full time. And I remember I was watching Rodolfo Vieira that year, literally like killing everyone. And he was like in Brazil, training full time, wasn't teaching. And then I remember I decided after a couple losses to move back to Brazil to do exactly what he was doing. And I moved back to Brazil. I left behind the American dream. I started living with my parents again. But I was going after a dream to be a world champion. And in the final, I lost. So it was really hard for me because I was lost because I was regret of my decision. So I had the American dream, I was like living the good life, and then I left everything behind to go after my dream, and I didn't win. So what I have to do now? How am I gonna make a live for myself from the sport? So it was really hard for me. I got really sad. I started fighting again, fighting a couple tournaments after the loss, and I lost. So I don't know if I got depressed, but I was like really sad because I tried to move back to America. I couldn't. They sold the gym, so I didn't have the place to come back. So I was regret. So I had a lot of time with myself thinking, just because of the beginning, that loss in particularly like start everything, start like a downfall for my head. And I remember I just stopped training. I decided to stop competing. And I was 20 years old, living in Brazil. No, I was 21 at the time. I was living in Brazil, and I didn't have a car. I just have like a motorcycle. And one tournament show up with a car brand new as a prize money. So you can imagine as a 21 years old guy in Brazil without a car, so I was struggling a little bit to have some good time, right? So it wasn't the most noble reason, but the car made me come back to training because I want to win the car. That was it. And then the following week, I got the opportunity to come to America to fight the World No Gi, which I did. So I went to Brasilia, I won the car, I flew to Los Angeles, then I fought the World No Gi. I won my division and I won the open weight. After that, I said, you know what? I was about to, when I stopped training, I decided to start college. So I went to start college, everything. So these two tournaments were the last tournaments that I would fight, and then the sport would be secondary in my life. So I won both of them. I went to compete, but after I won the worlds, I said, you know what? I'm a black belt world champion. Like, okay, it's not the main title because it's no gi. I want to be like gi world champion, but I'm not that bad. I'm not that like. So I decided to stay in America. I lost my ticket, my return ticket to Brazil, and I stayed in America. My life was really different. I didn't have a gym to train. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a place to live, but I had a dream. So I trained so much. I trained so hard. I had like a lot of people from my team that helped me. Like Lucas Leite was the guy that helped me so much in the beginning. He gave me a car to help me stay there. And I remember like I fought the worlds after that, 2012, and I won. So after after that made me everything makes sense. But everything started with the two times that when I thought about quitting, when I was a blue belt 16 years old, when I was a black belt 21 years old, there was two times I almost quit jiu-jitsu and I didn't. I kept going, I pushed through, and it was one of the best things happen in my life. So when we have bad days, we can just quit. We have to push through it because there's like the saying, without the ring, there is no rainbow, right? So a lot of times after the bad days, always gonna be like the best thing that happens in your life. So we can't just give up in the when we have like a bad day. So the two specific times that changed my life. When I almost quit and I didn't, so it proved like it was a big life lesson for me.
Another big challenge for a lot of people in jiu-jitsu are injuries and overcoming injuries, coming back and maintaining focus and discipline after having a big injury. I know you've come back from some pretty serious injuries, so do you have any stories you could share or any advice for people who are dealing with injuries and want to continue to keep training?
Yeah, for sure. The knee surgery that I had in 2015 was the worst and the best thing that happened in my life because of course I never want to get hurt, but I remember in 2015 I was 6 times world champion already, and my plan was to go to the tournament, win again, and start MMA career. So in my plan I would be 8 times world champion, start a new career. The second match of the day I got hurt and I blew my knee and everything changed. So I realized how small we are because we make so much plans and like in a moment everything changed, right? So I was the guy, I was the man, and out of nowhere I was like just in the hospital crying, asking myself why me, and why being like a really that I remember like going to the hospital, it was hard. I remember I was with Bernardo and I said, you know what, I'm done, I'm gonna work, I'm not gonna do this anymore. He said, okay, so you're gonna start working. I said, oh my God, no, I need to come back. But in the hospital, I made a promise to myself because I remember that day in the hospital when I stopped care about social media because I blew up my knee. I tore like 3 ligaments, and I remember when I was looking at the Grace Mag at the time, people were saying, "Oh yeah, Buchecha was losing, so he faked an injury." And I still remember the face of the guy that wrote that, and I want to like beat that guy, because man, I'm the hospital. But after that day, I realized like, you know what, nobody cares, so I just stopped like care about what people say in social media that day, and I promised myself, I said, I'm going to come back. I had so many good moments in that pyramid, so many world titles, that I'm gonna do everything I can to come back. And I don't know if I'm gonna win again the title, because there was I tore like 3 ligaments of my knee. I don't know if I'm gonna win, but I'm gonna walk down the stairs, walking, laughing with my friends, with matter or not, but I'm not gonna live in an ambulance crying like I did. I did a promise with myself. So after the surgery, I remember it was like really hard. I was crying a lot every day, like asking myself, why me? And the day I decided, okay, I'm not gonna be that guy. I just gonna do everything I can to change that. I changed the mindset. Something flipped, and I decided, okay, my life will be to recover my knee and come back to the competition, which I did. 10 months, I did every single day, PT, twice a day. My doctor told me not to compete. I said, you know what, I'm gonna compete anyway, because I lost a lot of sponsorships. I'm not like making money. I moved back to Brazil, so I was struggling to even to keep my living in America. So if I don't fight the worlds again, it's gonna be hard. And then I went to the worlds and I fought. I remember after the first match, it was something really emotional for me. I start crying. I beat the guy. I remember we're like 6-0. What the guy wasn't like big name or anything. And after that, I remember like I was just changing. I hear people, oh yeah, Buchecha is not the same anymore. So nobody knows what I'm going through. So I have to listen to that. So okay, no problem. And then I came back. I beat everyone, and I won the title. So I I keep my promise. I went there better than just fight. I won. So that was something really special. But what I realized was when I stopped being that guy, okay, crying, asking myself, oh, why me? I changed. I said, no, it is what it is. We can change that. That's my situation. Crying is not gonna help anything. So I decided to do what's in my control. What like doing PT, physical therapy, train hard, and change my mindset. When I did that, everything changed. Because if you cannot do anything to change, it is what it is. But if you can do something that is in control, which would be for me, to train, to do the PT, that's what I could do. Crying wouldn't help me. So when it started stop crying and working, everything changed. So injuries, no matter what, it's gonna happen for an athlete, especially sport like Jiu-Jitsu. Sooner or later, you're gonna get hurt. So just depend of you how you're gonna react of the situation. Or you either can cry, or you can do what you can do to come back and be in the same spot that you were before.
You've had so many matches in your career that were like defining moments, especially in the pyramid, like you mentioned. Are there any matches that you consider the defining moments of your career?
Yeah, for sure. My fight against Rodolfo Vieira, 2012, the quarterfinal of the open weight wasn't even like fight for the medal. But before the match, I knew Rodolfo was the guy. Rodolfo was the man. Rodolfo is the guy that was the biggest rival of my career. And I knew if I win that match, I would be somebody special in Jiu-Jitsu in the sport. But if I lose, I would be just one more guy among everybody else on the crowd. So in my head, I remember before the fight, I was warming up. He was like next to me. I looked to the door when it opened. I saw the light and like the exit. Then I told myself, if I lose that fight, I'm gonna walk out of that door and I'm never gonna stop. I'm never gonna step in a jiu-jitsu competition ever in my life again if I lose that fight. So when I walk in the fight, I knew I would win no matter what. The only way for him to beat me that day would be if he like choked me and I would pass out, because I'm not going. I wouldn't tap or I wouldn't do anything. I had this in my head, so strong, and I'm not losing. I'm gonna win, because I knew that fight would change my life, which literally did. Was the best fight that I had in my life. Was like a really tough fight, and I beat him. Went to the semi-final, beat Bernardo, then went to the final, beat Léo Nogueira. So I became. They became the champion for the first time. So it was something really special. So if one fight can define my career, would be this one, 100%. If you had the opportunity to go home, watch the fight, I think it's gonna be worth like 10 minutes for sure.
So even as you were winning all those titles, you always remained very humble. You were, of course, confident, but you always maintained your humility. So was that difficult? Can you talk about that process of getting all those titles? You ended up getting 13, but how difficult was it to maintain your humility while you were winning all those important championships?
Yes, for sure. It's something that you can get to your head, but I saw a lot of people close to me that after one title, people change. And I learned from the mistakes of other people. So when I look like, I don't want to be the guy. A medal not going to change who I am. A piece of like a medal or money never going to change who I am. So I made the promise to myself. And at the end of the day, everything that I got because of Jiu-Jitsu made me who I am. So why I would change, you know? If you know, all my friends are the same. I kept the same mindset. I'm the same person, and any title never changed who I am. Because I think at the end of the day, uh, titles people gonna forget, medals gonna just get dusty, and money you're gonna spend. So at the end of the day, people gonna remember you because of who you are, not because of the titles that you have. So, of course, I know I'm one of the best that ever did it, Jiu-Jitsu. I came from really humble beginnings. I had like a really hard time in the beginning. My family didn't come from a traditional family of the sport, so I had to start working from the ground, and I made it. So there is no reason for me to change who I am, right? So of course nowadays I know I'm one of the best, but when I'm gonna fight, I don't need to to offend my opponent or to make sure that I'm better than him. I'm confident, and I have to show that confidence on the mat. I don't need to disrespect people to show that I'm confident. So that's what I see. That's what I always did. And at the end of the day, when you stop fighting, when you stop competing, I know I have a lot of friends that I did in Jiu-Jitsu, and people gonna remember me because of who I am, not because of what I want. And I think that's the long term goal, right? At the end of the day, I'm not competing anymore, but I feel the love of people, and a lot of kids never even saw me competing, but they like me, not because of just what I want, but the person who I am. So I think that's the most important of the only titles.
I was hoping you could give us some advice on training now, because one thing that also stood out about your career in competition is you always had really good defense. If you were ever put in a bad spot, you were able to get out of the position and then turn it into something offensive. So is that something you worked on in training? Did you put yourself in bad positions to be able to have that confidence that you could turn a match around if you were in a bad spot?
Yes, Jiu-Jitsu is something that I always put myself in every situation in training, because you can't get surprised. You can't go in a tournament, oh, I never been in this situation. So it's really important, of course, to train your strength, but it's the most important to train your weakness. Because if you never like put yourself in bad positions in the gym with your friends, when you have when you see yourself in a bad situation during the competition, you're gonna be in trouble. So I made sure to put myself in every bad spot during training. I don't care. All my friends know I'm the guy that tap the most in the gym because I'm not afraid to try. And that made me who I am, because I don't have the ego. Of course, in the competition, I have a lot of ego. I don't want to tap, I don't want to lose. But in the gym, I try just to be the best version of myself. So I always train my bad spots. I don't like I don't like one kind of guard. I ask my friend to do this kind of guard for me to learn. So I'm not the kind of guy, no, I hate this, I don't want to train. So no, I always put myself in bad positions to learn, to understand, and that made me better. But of course, for you to do that, you have to leave your ego outside of the room, outside of the mat. Otherwise, it's not gonna happen. So ego is not gonna take you far if you wanna get far in jiu-jitsu, if you wanna get good in jiu-jitsu. So just make sure that don't be that guy in the gym that don't like to lose, don't like to tap. Just go there and train. I rather tap to my friends in the gym than tap here in a tournament.
So I know you've had a lot of really important mentors in your life throughout your career, at every stage of your career. So can you talk about some of the people who were a big influence on you and who mentored you throughout your career and guided you to get to the place where you are?
Of course, I wouldn't be here without my parents. So my mom and my dad, they were like big responsible for me to be here, for me to build my character, to help me to be here. Without them, I wouldn't go anywhere. Since the beginning, they believed so much in me, way more than myself, and that's why I'm here. So I couldn't mention anyone without mentioning them first. My master, Leo Vieira, the guy is there, taught me so much. He's not just like my coach, my master, but this guy is like a father to not just me, but all the checkmate. So he has a lot of sons, and he taught so much, not just on the mat, but mostly outside of the mat. So I learned so much with him about jiu-jitsu, about life, and about many things. And I think these people were like the most important mentors that I had in my career, my life, not career, but my life. Of course, my friends, I'm kind of like the youngest one in the group, so I have a lot of close friends. I had like two big sponsors during my career, which was Shoyoro and Ruka. So I spent a lot of times with Vince from Shoyoro and Pat Tenori from Ruka. And these guys built something from scratch and became like really big brands. So to learn to be like daily with them, listening to learning was something really good for my career too, especially not just on the mat but about the business side. So I had the opportunity to understand a lot of the other side outside of the mat. So I think these names were like the biggest mentors that I had.
Well, Buchecha, we really want to thank you for being here, for your time, for sharing all of your experience. I think people are really inspired by your titles and your performances on the mat, but especially by your character as well. You've always treated people very well and always been very humble in victory and defeat. So thank you so much for doing this. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. For me, it was a pleasure to share a little bit of my story, a little bit of my journey. Like I told Andre and Siriema, when I came here, I felt I was so happy to see what Jiu-Jitsu became. So I don't want to be away from the sport. So I want to be part of that. So for me, it's a really pleasure to be sharing my story for the new generation, from the old generation, to be watching and being part of this big party what Jiu-Jitsu became. Thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you so much.